Oh, hey everybody. It's that special time of year. You know what I'm talking about. We're all wondering if we're gonna get that special visitor. Have we been naughty? Have we been nice? You know who we're talking about, right? Not Santa Claus. Krampus! That's right, folks. In this month's edition of Arting Out with Scott Fischer, we're going to talk about painting Krampus. First, we start in Alchemy. We usually start in Alchemy these days. It's a free program that lets me break down things kind of abstractly. I have it set on mirror mode right now, so actually I can only work one side of it, and it duplicates it on the other side. Really good for symmetry. And I'm applying my theories of gradients and all sorts of stuff in here. That was the first version. We did another version of it because that's the beauty of Alchemy. I moved through all of these probably within 40 minutes or so, I would guess. This is the second one. I felt he was too human, so we moved on to the third one. I really wanted to get a little more goat into Krampus because that's traditionally what he has in him. So I really slowed my roll here. I paced myself, and I tried to come up with a pretty solid design. And that was looking pretty good. So we export these things out the door and into Photoshop. And these are the three options I had. I chose the middle one. And we took the middle one and we started beating it up in Photoshop, which is what we always do. So this just shows you a couple of the transforming, smudging, pushing, pulling, trying to get him to look really cool. I liked that hair, but it was a little too distracting, so I really wanted to simplify and make it nicely graphic, and this is where we wound up. So I print this thing out, and I got a piece of wood, and I cut it. And the cool thing is I tried to line up the wood grain where it kind of concaved in where his cheeks would. So that's kind of cool. If you see down through the paint, you'll see some of those striations. This is also me using some gloss medium and varnish, and I put about 1,000,000 coats on and wet sanded in between coats. I broke out the FW ink and more of the varnish, and I glazed in some gradients, kind of matching my printout. That kind of shows you. This is kind of like saving me time, because when I go into do detail, a lot of these gradients will still come into play. Rub some vine charcoal on the back of that printout that you had seen earlier, and I'm able to transfer it down onto the wood. But it's vine charcoal, so it's very light. So it's very, it could blow away. So I got to go back in with FW ink and reestablish the drawing, which is what you're seeing here. I spray that with some crystal clear, which is kind of neat because it actually gives the vine charcoal a little bit of darkness to it. And with that, I wet sanded once again after a few more coats of that varnish. I really wanted a sleek surface for this. Now we start painting. This is going to be predominantly FW ink for most of this painting, actually. And this is me kind of looking at the reference I had done. It's all out of my head. I'm not really looking at anything for lighting. I'm just kind of basing it all on that abstract alchemy. I know I'm going to have the red of the tongue, and I know I'm going to balance that with a little bit of red at the top, where there's a kind of a switch of birch sticks, which is traditionally associated with him at the top. That's going to have a little red too, so we'll tie the two together. But this is me just trying to find my light and darks, find my little pockets, my little sweet nooks and crannies of dark and light. You can still see some of that charcoal vine drawing underneath there, and I'm using that almost as like almost like as if you scribbled on a piece of paper and you filled in every other hole. It's just that sometimes it just activates an area and gives it a cool texture. And remember, I'm working all this on top of the original gradient that I had done, which saves me a ton of time because really I'm going in with not a lot of rendering here. This is pretty much solid paint. You can really see that up at the top with the birch twigs, as I went in with just one solid color. But this is still FW ink, but it's me cutting white into it, which has more of a gouache type effect. And it can go down pretty opaque, as you can see here. Just kind of adding twigs as I go, and that's the first brush in of the little, wrap that's kind of holding it all together and tying it to the horn. All right, we're working up the eyes. We know we want them to pop, a little highlight on the nose. And I went ahead with this FW ink and I started lightly. This is pretty watered down FW ink. I started lightly going in and just doing some base rendering. But it's tough to render in straight FW ink because it dries so fastly. So it's great if you're doing hatch work, but I know that I'm going to save the real rendering for oil paint later in this process. But this is great. It just lets me establish more texture and start getting some of that volume in the piece. Okay, so I knew I wanted to go as graphic as I did in my comp, so the idea is that I want all of this texture to be active in the face, which is where I want it to be. Now, if you have that texture everywhere throughout your piece, it almost becomes like looking at static at the television. There's too much texture everywhere, and even though there's cool hair strokes and stuff in there, I opted for something way more graphic, which is why I'm going with the super dark, which is gonna make us have just a great playground and a great framing element for all of the texture that's going to be going on in the face and in the horns and sort of all that good stuff. All FW ink still, just straight black FW ink at this point. It dries matte though, as you can see, so you can't quite tell what its value is, which means that I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take some more gloss medium and I'm going to paint this whole thing with it again. And see, it's like a varnish, right? So all of that dark, which had dried rather flat, is now going to go back to its gloss state. One of my favorite parts of any piece like this is painting in the negative space background. Suddenly you go from something that looks really mushy to something that looks like, oh my God, it almost looks finished. And that's what we're doing here. This is not white, it's sort of a beige. And I could have left it without this on there, but again, my aim is to do something so graphic here that you'll be able to see some texture in the paint in that light area, but not too much, because I really want you to focus on that in the face. Going back in, hitting the darks one more time, hitting some of the lights one more time, because I know we're getting close to the oil painting stage, and I want to do any other legwork I need to in this FW ink right now. Get it all in there. Just spot those little nooks and crannies. I then glossed it, and guess what? Wet sanded it again. Got it super smooth again. Went back in one more time with the FW ink and remembered, oh yeah, I got to make that wrap a little bit more red. So we went ahead and did that as well. Now, when that's dry, I get out the Walnut Alkyd medium and I wipe down the entire surface with a very thin coat of this medium. So it's oil. So now I'm using oil paint. And here's the sweet thing. When you put down a thin skim coat of that medium, and I mean so thin, you almost put it on and try to wipe it all the way off. That's how little is on there. When you start cutting in with your oil paint, it's going to blend so much easier. It's like an instant wet on wet technique, basically. And I'm just building up my highlights towards the core. I really wanted the brightest highlights to be, or at least the biggest mass of those bright highlights to be up in the core of the face and the nose and the forehead and in those areas. Still a little cross-hatching here and there because it kind of gives them more of a furry kind of feeling. I thought that'd be kind of rad. And then I blurred it all out there at the end with a soft brush. And this is the final result. Now, I blurred out the outer edges of that rendering, but the stuff that's in on the nose is actually still pretty crisp. And the whole idea is that you almost want it to go out of focus a little bit as you get away, and I didn't want the strokes to be as strong on the outer edges of it as they are in the middle of the nose and the forehead. There you go. This is a real close-up of the nose and the forehead. Well, okay, folks, I hope everybody has a happy holiday and a great new year, and I hope you enjoyed this painting of Krampus, and I hope you've all been just a little naughty, but mostly nice. Thanks, guys. Take care.